There's a book by Kahneman, Daniel Kahneman, who got a Nobel Prize in economics, Thinking, Fast and Slow. And the book's about many aspects of thinking, but I like the title, Thinking, Fast and Slow. What he's basically saying is that there are two kinds of thinking. There's fast, intuitive thinking, and then there's slow, rational thinking. And what you're doing is you're using, he calls it system 2, is the slow thinking. You're using system 2 to look at the ideas that system 1 came up with. And it's to say, most of the time we're using system 1 just automatically. You're walking along, you're not figuring out where your feet are going. It's subconscious. So another word for system 1 is subconscious. And here's a question. Have you often given a tip in a restaurant?
Of course.
Okay. Who'd you give the tip to?
The waiter.
And who's responsible for making the food?
The chef.
And how often have you tipped the chef?
That's a good point. Hopefully that money goes to a jar for everyone.
Well, it depends on the store, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
That's a good
very
point.
likely the chef gets paid more because they don't get much in tips.
Mm.
Here's the thing. That chef is below your consciousness. You don't see the chef. You don't see the chef cooking. And yet the chef is the most important part. And what I'd like to suggest to you is that subconscious thinking is the most important part. Okay? Now, there's a theory that says something like, if you become a real expert in something, playing the violin, piano, mathematics, you have to spend 10,000 hours. You will have spent 10,000 hours getting there. It doesn't mean you can get there by spending 10,000 hours. You've got to, but if you get there, it has taken you 10,000 hours. Okay. What you're doing is you're, in some sense, training your subconscious. So, for example, you think of these very complicated patterns of a pianist. They're not thinking through every keystroke at that time. That's because they have thought them through in the past. They become subconscious reactions. Okay? Now, the idea of subconscious is at least 200 years old. I think David Hume talked about subconscious thinking and conscious thinking. So I'm not trying to say something new. I'm just trying to say that if you take these two and you try to weigh them in comparison with each other, that the subconscious comes out to be tremendously important. Whereas if we're trying to train ourselves, we think we're training the conscious part. But the conscious part looks at the subconscious. Now, what I found is that there's a way of evaluating this. Usain Bolt had the world record in the 100 meters. And now if we take 50 times longer race, that would be 5 kilometers. And so what are the chances that he would win a 5-kilometer race in a high level competition?
But much less.
Almost certainly you wouldn't see any sprinter in a 5-kilometer race. It's just too different. Now, there's no way to measure that I know of to who is the fastest mathematician in terms of thinking, or the fastest physicist, or the fastest writer of novels, or any of these things. But there is one activity where it's detailed, very detailed thinking along these lines, evaluations, and that's playing chess. Magnus Carlsen is a world champion. he was world champion 5 times. After a while, he said, "This is boring." And he went to speed chess. Speed chess is called blitz. But you can think of it this way. In speed chess, you have an average of about 3 seconds per move. You've got to look at the whole chessboard and make a move in 3 seconds on the average. You've got clocks whereas slow chess is 3 minutes per move, roughly speaking. And so it's about 60 times slower. So if it's like running, there's no comparison. You're just going to have different people. But Magnus Carlsen is number 1 in both in terms of the rating. So this rating is an international society. Every major tournament anywhere in the world with top players is going to be rated, and it's going to be folded into the score that people have. So the rating might be 2,800, whatever, 28 and 35 or some such number. And it'll tell you how he has averaged, and it's based on how he does compared with other people who are also rated. So they come up with an overall rating. No bias involved. So you can look at the top players in slow chess, and let's say the top 20, and you can look at the top 20 in speed chess. Now, if we were looking at 5 kilometer, if we took the top 1,000 of each, there might be no overlap. That is 5 kilometers versus 100 meters. No overlap. But in the top 20 chess players, there are 13, last time I checked, which was August, there are 13 people who are on both lists of 20. Now, what this has to do with is it's basically saying the way you play slow chess is you get a quick impression. Maybe moving my knight to take his queen is a good move. Okay. And maybe you move that very quickly. If you might just move that, you only have 3 seconds. But then if you're talking about slow chess, you say, well, but if I take his queen, what can he do? And you're looking at different possibilities. He's going to checkmate my king and I'll lose the game. So I analyze this by putting together other quick judgments. Think of it this way. You're walking along a path and you come to a big puddle and there's mud on both sides. And you say, how can I get around this mud puddle? Well, you're looking around, you see some spots which look dry or some rock, whatever, on both sides. And you're trying to say, does it look like I can get a path through there? My subconscious is telling me there are various spots that look good. And if I can chain them together into a path, then I can walk around the path. This is analysis. You see, this is conscious reasoning, but the subconscious is picking out the spots that look good. So all the reasoning is basically making quick judgments and then seeing if the judgments are good. Sometimes we just make the quick judgments without bothering to check. If we're walking along a path, we're not in tune with what our feet are doing. But if something unusual happens, then our brain starts paying attention. But most of the things we do are instant judgments. I was talking, a friend of mine called me up. He was stuck at the mall. I live in Columbia, Maryland, in the United States. And he says, I can't find my car. Can you help me out? And so I'm thinking that, well, I got to get my clothes on, get in the car, drive to the mall, then we've got to come some kind of a search pattern. And then boom, all of a sudden it occurred to me, on your key fob, there's probably a button. And if you push the button, the horn will blow. Because you have a Toyota, I happen to know. And so he did that, and the horn started blowing, and he found the car. Now, you understand the problem I was thinking about was what I'm going to do to get there and help him out. And instead, after 20 seconds, the subconscious had been calculating and came up with an alternate solution. I mean, I wasn't doing anything to think about the key fob, and boom, the answer pops up. That's subconscious. So what was my brain doing during those 20 seconds? And what is more important? The subconscious? The subconscious came up with the answer while I was consciously thinking about a different problem, namely how to get there and drive and so on. So I'm trying to say that the subconscious is the cook in the restaurant. He's subconscious. He's below your consciousness. In fact, you don't know if it's him or her or what. You don't know if there are 5 people or 2 or anything. And it's below your conscious. Therefore, you believe it doesn't count. And therefore, you tip the waitress. Now, I don't even have a way to tip them, but you recognize the problem that we're not recognizing, we're not giving credit where credit is due. And all kinds of our thinking is based on this. Again, subconscious can be trained. And many of the things we do wind up training the subconscious.
How?
So, well, if suppose I take a high school student, a senior, a 12th year student in high school, and is a good student in math, above average in math, and I give him a problem, math problem, calculate some volumes, any kind of math problem that would be a standard problem. And then his subconscious starts thinking, aha, this looks like a quadratic problem. I have to use the quadratic rule. And I memorized the quadratic, it just pops up into his mind. And he tries to do it. And nope, turns out it doesn't work. Then he starts thinking, well, I should draw a picture. And then he goes through a conscious drawing a picture. He's going through various things he's been taught to do. And the subconscious is picking the ones which seem like they are most likely to work. And then he works through and he solves a problem. Okay? Now, his ability to do this depends on his ability to pick out the right algorithms to use, the right procedures. And so the subconscious is playing a big role. But basically, he's doing the same thing a computer would do to solve the problem. Namely, it tries to convert the problem as stated in English into a set of procedures it can go through to solve the problem. And sometimes people say that's not thinking. Whereas I say, well, you can't just talk about whether or not a computer can think without asking whether or not people can think. And if the high school student is going through the same procedures as the computer, then your definition of thinking must say that they're both thinking or they're both not thinking.